black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Its operational presence facilitates the ability of otherwise exclusively self-interested individuals to cooperatively coordinate and organize their activities toward the achievement of the goals they find mutually desirable. What are we saying here then? Consciousness is a tool. It is a means by which we adapt to our environment and adapt our environment to ourselves. But more than that, group consciousness allows us to get people who would ordinarily be merely interested in themselves as individuals to cooperate one with the other, to coordinate their behavior, and to organize that behavior in cooperative ways, to achieve an end that moves beyond them as individuals, to achieve ends that are good for the group, achieve an end that they, as members of the group, find mutually to their benefit. Because we must recognize ultimately that the group is an extension of the individual. That the individual uses the group and is used by the group because the group can attain things that the individual by himself or herself cannot attain or achieve. 99% of the things that we probably are involved with today have been as a result of group activities. Whether it's the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, the food we eat, the transportation we use, you name it, one thing after the other. These things are the result of coordinated human behavior, of groups deciding and individuals in groups deciding to coordinate their behavior, to synchronize their behavior, so that those things could be produced for the enjoyment of the group as a whole and for the enjoyment of individuals as a whole. Think of how much trouble we would have if we tried to produce everything in the individual that we enjoy and that we use. As a matter of fact, many of the things we enjoy and use would be impossible for us to achieve as an individual. That is why ultimately then we share a group consciousness, because many of the individual things we desire can only be achieved through group activity. So in a sense, the individual is born for the group and the group for the individual.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson. I would like to welcome you to the show. Again, for those of you who are new to the show, the purpose of the Umoja Circle is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction when it comes to who we are as people of African descent. And also, I believe that through dialogue, that's the only way you could have a shift in consciousness. And when you have a shift in consciousness, you believe me, your world will change. And talking about consciousness, I've been saying those words for many years now, and today I want to literally talk about what I mean by that. And this is part 2 of a 2-part series based on the person who wrote this book. And his name is Brother Dr. Amos Wilson. He's from Hattiesburg, Virginia, and he got his doctorate degree from Fordham University in New York City. He's a well-rounded psychologist and a brilliant scholar, really. Unfortunately, like a lot of our great men, many of you do not know about him, but he passed in 1995. But he's a teacher, educator, but a serious person when it comes to who we are, people of African descent, and how our psyche and how our consciousness have been affected by the society that we were have been forced to live in for over 400 years that still affect our psyche, as you could tell by the rhetoric that's going on. We're in an election year in 2024, and we're dealing with an oppositional, let's say, political party that is pushing certain types of authoritarian policies. They're pushing a type of controlling how we read books. They are pushing ideas about pulling books from schools, but usually these books are the information that would benefit black and brown people and educate white youth to the world that they live in, so they don't wonder why we have these difficulties between brothers and sisters and young white kids who are now becoming friends, okay, with their classmates, but they are seeing in the news all this controversy that's going on. But if you don't understand the past, you will never understand the present. Okay, the present, or the present moment, as I always like to say, is sent to us from us in the past, or from those in the past. It is a message to us to understand. And many of our ancestors, both white and black, talk to us through the books that were written 100 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, by those like Dr. Amos Wilson. This is his magnum opus. His greatest work is a combination of all his books. He wrote about, I don't know, about 10, 12 books, but this was the accumulation of all of them found in this work. You know, deals with the psychology, which he's an expert on, but he also talks about the psychology affects the economics, it affects the politics, it affects the social connections, and he wants you to understand, and I'm letting you know through my research of other great scholars, that yes, he is correct. You know, the kind of consciousness that exists in your mind will determine how you not only interact with yourself, but you interact with other people. And whoever controls the development of your consciousness by what's put in front of you through the media, through other types of communication process, okay, or disinformation that you have to weave through. If you don't have the proper consciousness, you'll be manipulated and controlled, whether you're conscious of that control or not, because consciousness is supposed to be an awareness, but based on your knowledge. Okay, so let's go. I think I'm gonna start where I left off. It had to do with about power, how consciousness is the power. Let's go to my first slide here. What this means, we have this gift of the Creator, but we don't use this gift. He's talking about, yet as black people, we expect to be protected by the Creator, while at the same time we reject His most important gift, and that means. And he said, this is what Dr. Amos Wilson has always talked about. Okay, we are no different than anybody else, regardless of what we were taught in school. When I was going to school, they were still talking about black people didn't do anything. They were always giving us the fact that the great, even Kemet or ancient Egypt was in some place called the Middle East. They even created that, but that's all northeastern Africa. Anything that had to do with that looked like us was shaped differently, turned upside down. But we have a mind. That's the thing. The mind that we have, the conscious mind that we have, is a tool. And we got to be aware, that's what consciousness is, that we have this tool, and there's ways in how you use it. It's not some abstract thing, it is a cogent thing. Let's go on to the next one. Okay. In other words, consciousness is a form of power. The power consciousness has depends on its level. It is organizational state and its functional state. Okay, that's why people who want, use, and dominate other people first attempt to control their consciousness. Example, propaganda, right? When you go to war, you got to make sure you get people ready to fight and kill and shoot and whoever you complain the enemy is. propaganda is one way of a group controls another group, or society controls certain groups within that. We were told for hundreds of years that we were nothing but savages, right? That's the consciousness that we had to. They had to want to develop not the Kunta Kinte consciousness, who knew where he was and who knew where he came from, remembered his village. They wanted to create the Toby, who was an enslaved person dominated by his white masters. This is real. Okay, and people believe me that our consciousness are constantly being manipulated. Why you think that millions of dollars are spent on commercials? You see, is a power, okay, that's used by businesses so you could buy their products. Okay, I remember when I was a kid that my mother would always say, when I know she wants toothpaste, and there's all kinds of variety of toothpaste, but she would use the word Colgate. Okay, or when we say starch or bleach, okay, and there's all kinds of products that bleach your clothes, but we all will say Clorox, meaning bleach. Okay, so your consciousness is manipulated every day. If you're not aware of it, and make sure that you understand it. That's why I read every day. That's why I study every day, because I have to fight the consciousness that are being pushed out. And that's why I have a theory, an African-centered way of seeing the world. Okay, that this is not who I am. This is not who my people are. Last show I talked about the Japanese and what happened to them and how they came out through it after having atomic bombs dropped on them, after losing horrendously in World War II. But now they beat us in the business world. They're well respected and doors are open to them where 80 years ago it was not. What had them do? The type of cultural consciousness that they have. They did not accept the definition that other groups said they were defeated. Even in America, they said this is who we are because we know our Bushido, our samurai, our ancient culture. We were disconnected from that as people of African descent, and other forms of information was put into our consciousness from the time we were children, okay? That's what Dr. Amos Wolf is telling you. We have to have our own understanding of self. Let's go on and continue with this discussion. One thing about consciousness is that the state of the consciousness you're in will determine what you're capable of doing. That's an interesting point. For example, if you are in a state of consciousness of say you're tired, okay, you're in a state of consciousness of getting to work. I got to do this work. You know your body is responding to that state of consciousness. It's dragging. You're tired. Anybody who stayed up late to do, pass a test if you're in college, or been working yourself to death to get this thing or get this promotion or make sure that you get this grant, okay? But you need the consciousness of sleep because your body will benefit from rest, but you don't listen to it. Totally two different consciousness. There's the consciousness of sleep, which you need, and what happens when you're in the consciousness of sleep? Your body goes through its proper refreshment and whatever it needs to make you more healthy during the night, okay? But when you're in a consciousness of stress or consciousness of working hard and working long hours, your body is not getting its proper rest and not its proper, so your consciousness affects your body, okay? Okay, it will determine what you're capable of doing. You can't, after 18 hours of sleep, of no sleep, your body has the type of consciousness that somebody who drank an alcohol level that is, over the legal alcohol. You won't be able to drive. You shouldn't be able to drive if your body's in the consciousness of exhaustion. Okay, so you're constantly shifting your consciousness. You're not even aware that you do it every day. What kind of consciousness are you working on? Are you working on the consciousness of anger? How your behavior change when you're angry? You have a loving person, right, that you love. When you're in the consciousness of love, for all of us who have partners, I'm single, but for all those who have partners, when you're in the consciousness of love, there's a certain way you relate to that person, okay? All right? What you're doing with that person compared to when you're in the consciousness of anger against that person. Are you going to act the same No. You're not even aware you're changing your whole demeanor, your whole personality, your whole way you talk to that person when you're angry compared to when you love it, okay? That's what consciousness does. And that's, you got to understand the power of it. And whoever can tick your, could condition you or make you react to or respond to them are controlling your consciousness, and they have power over you. Okay? The same thing happened to when white America had power over black folks. That's why they didn't want us to read. They didn't want us to go to school. They was against the law to do that. Now they try to ban books again. All right? They wanted to control your consciousness. And if you're not conscious of that, you're going to fall prey to their manipulation. Let's go on to the next one. When you are in one level of consciousness, you can do only one thing. When you're in another level of consciousness, you can do another thing. That's what I'm talking about. Whether you're in a stressful consciousness or a restful consciousness, you're going to be doing two different behavioral patterns. You're shifting. For example, this is again, let me reiterate what I said about the rest. When our mind knows our body needs rest, you will not get that rest if you're in a constant state of wakeful consciousness or stressful consciousness. Make it impossible to be in a state of restful consciousness. It is only when you put ourselves into a consciousness of sleep that your body can begin the healing process. That's basically what I was saying before, okay? I just reinforced it with this example. This is what Dr. Amos Wilson tells us, okay? Let's go on to the next one. Yet while you're in the consciousness of sleep, you're unable to do things that is done in wakeful states of consciousness. So that's just a repeat of that. Okay, that means there are many levels of consciousness. So if we learn to recognize the behaviors associated with them, we will then be able to regulate our behaviors in every appropriate ways. Why aren't we taught that as people of Africa? There are certain traditions in the culture, say, again, let me use the Japanese, that talks about, traditions of being peace and meditation and all these things. We are conditioned to believe, when you listen to our young people, well, we don't like history. History is boring, all right? If you are smart and a young black person in junior high school, you're acting white. Why are we having these consciousness that defeat the process that all human beings do? Learning is ever growing. Learning is a power. And consciousness is part, like I said earlier, a part of knowing, part of reasoning, part of understanding and shaping the world that's around you. And if you have the wrong type of consciousness that tells you that you're poor me, I'm poor, no. Your consciousness tells you you're poor. You have the ability to do what is necessary to make money. Because we have examples of that. People who come from poor backgrounds end up CEOs of companies. What's the difference? They have a different consciousness that makes them move forward regardless of the obstacles. Consciousness is not abstract, folks. It is real. If you shift your consciousness, you shift your world. That's what I say every time I open up this show. Let's go on. Exactly. That's why you must understand that consciousness enables us to achieve certain ends. It makes it possible for us to accomplish certain things. And when you are able to achieve certain things and accomplish certain things, that means you are exercising power, folks. Power. A battery that's dead has no power. If your mind is dead, you have no power. If your mind is controlled and told that it is this or it is that you can't do this, and your consciousness develops that continues to believe that, you have no power. Every human being has that thing, that ability. That's what our ancestors taught us. This is not something that, a philosopher from Greek said. Heck, Africans taught the Greeks. That's another show, another story. Let's go on to the next one. Power means having the ability to accomplish and achieve certain ends in the face of resistance, the ability to act. Okay, let's go on to the next one. For example, if you're in a state of consciousness called anger, like I said earlier, your relationship or actions to that person you say you love changes, okay? As long as you're in that state of consciousness, the way you speak to them or whether you even want to be around them changes as long as that state of consciousness is in possession of you. Believe me, you got friends that you're angry with today. You got loved ones, you're angry with them today. Are you acting the way you would act if your consciousness was a loving consciousness right now? Think about it. Let's go on. Okay? Let's expand this. I'm talking about individuals, but you also have society who use these psychological instruments to create a people to do that. What do you think we were conditioned, the way we were conditioned through enslavement? Okay, we weren't the same people our ancestors were 1,000 years ago on the continent of Africa, when you had the great Mansa Musa who brought all that gold. Okay, you have what we've got Ghana today, you know, the Mali Empire. We knew how to run empires and do economics. Okay, the earliest human beings were African. Okay, we were around for 200,000 years. We learned something, but by 14 and 15 and 1600s, under enslavement, we were conditioned to believe that we can do anything, that we were these things called slaves. And look at how some of us act in about the 1800s and even into today. You know, there's certain individuals who are embarrassed to call themselves Africans. What kind of consciousness was created? Therefore, people who want to control other people seek to control their consciousness. What makes black people that look like me today refuse their blackness? Or always condemning people that look like them, like us? What kind of consciousness? You think they were born that way? What group of people deny their own people, okay? Who claim that they don't want to know this black stuff or this African stuff? What kind of people talk like that, okay? People who were trained to think a certain way, who was manipulated by their consciousness. Go on. Let's go to the next one. Consciousness is, to a good degree, a social product also, meaning that it is created based on the nature of the type of social interactions groups of people have with each other in a society. That's why it is important to know, as people of African descent, not only here in America, but around the world, the consciousness that we exhibit today reflect the nature of the interactions we have with the descendants of the people of European descent in this country who have enslaved us. Okay, this interaction between white and black Americans, or between Latinos and white America, is based on the manipulation of the consciousness, the experience. Whose reality are we going by? When you try to speak, when our ancestors tried to speak to it, like Malcolm, who tried to bring this truth, he was called a radical. Marcus Garvey was exiled, even though he showed that black folks who were Garveyites owned, shipping lines, had offices all over, not only the United States, but in South America and throughout the Caribbean. But this system crushed that because we couldn't have that kind of consciousness contradict their relationship, which is supposed to be less than. And to maintain that hierarchy, you had to create a consciousness, and we can't have people thinking for themselves. All right, let's go on to the next one. All right, remember that for 246 years, like I said the last show, 1619 to 1865, with the system of enforcement enforced by slave codes, and another 100 years, 1865 to 1965, of Jim Crow segregation / apartheid enforced by segregation and black code laws, along with the last 59 years from 1965 to today in 2024, with blacks still having to deal with systemic racism. Those laws are not coincidental. Why do you have those laws if we were supposed to have free will? Are we in America, land of the free? But you have to have all this type of controlling mechanisms to shape how you think. If you thought outside of that box that was forced on us, you were either hung, lynched, or considered radical. Okay, which is another shaping of consciousness. So when you have children coming up and seeing that, who fought this? Who accepted? Why did we accept the enslavement? But you don't know the history behind it, then you have this internal self-hate, and you want to be anything other than what you look like. You think that is coincidental? Consciousness and the shaping of the consciousness, folks, has power. That's what you must understand, and that's what the great Dr. Amos Wilson and Dr. Francis Quest Welsing and Dr. Amos Naeem Akbar and Dr. Wade Noble, all these great black psychologists have been preaching for nearly 50 to 60 years, that we have been conditioned to think the way we are, to act the way we are as people of African descent is not coincidental. Let's go on. I got about 2 minutes, but I want to get to, okay, the nature of the dominant group's purpose and why they enslaved us and created an apartheid systemic racist system was to conscientiously control us as people of African descent. Okay, this is the reason you now have today in 2024 the banning of black history books in schools across America, where there are Republican-run state legislators. Yes, I'm calling out the Republicans. That's what they're doing, because they have their policies and ideas are no different than in 1860 when the Confederacy was created. It's the same ideology. It's the same consciousness of domination. You know, you don't want these brown, black, yellow, red, and all these other groups that you found when you went around the world in your caravels to control and colonize. That's how you do it, by controlling the information and the images that produces the kind of consciousness that will either uplift the people or keep them subservient to you. Consciousness is the power. Let's go see if I get one more in. Consciousness is composed of our knowledge, our perceived knowledge, our opinions, our conditioned emotions, our conditioned behaviors, our concept of ourselves, our worldview, our unconscious drives and motives. All that, folks, is wrapped into consciousness. I'm gonna stop it right here, and it just lets you know that, we must have books like this in a library. We must stop and understand, that we have, the only way you can fight the world and how it approaches you and who wants to dominate you, you must have a theory. African centeredness is what I use. I'm centered in my African scholarship. I'm centered in my African worldview. I mean, from the inside out. Okay, not from what I was taught from those who came from the outside in, that was European ways of educational system. I had to re-educate myself. Carter G. Woodson said, and I'll leave it at that, even though he got his doctorate degree from Harvard, it took him 26 years to get rid of all that nonsense because it didn't fit him. That's why he created Black History Month. And with that, I'm gonna say peace, Hotep. Help shape your consciousness, I hope. Bye-bye.